welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. And so our conversation on the program today is going to be focused around the real sector. Can Nigeria's real sector actually help to achieve inclusive growth and job creation, which we know is actually the theme of the World Economic Forum Africa, the 25th edition of the forum, actually, which is going to be happening here in Nigeria in a couple of weeks in Abuja from May the 7th to the 9th. And so on the program today, we're going to be talking about one key sector that a lot of people expect is supposed to be the driver of the economy, and that is the real sector. And so I'm being joined on the program by an industrialist, and is also the managing director of Coleman Wires and Cables, Mr. George Onofowokan. Good morning, Mr. Onofowokan. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, the World Economic Forum Africa begins next month, and it's the first time Nigeria is actually hosting it. It's a very big thing for us, you know, especially now that you know, it's an emerging market. Everybody seems to be paying attention to us. So generally, we are in the spotlight. Now, with the recent rebasing, of course, we're now the 26th largest economy in the world and the biggest in Africa. But as a key player of the economy, what are your expectations, actually, from this summit?
I think it's a good thing for Nigeria. It's a good achievement, at least, that we get to host it. I've now actually been officially notified that we are the biggest economy in the continent. Now, the advantage of an economic forum is that it brings like minds together, and who are there to actually look at your policies, look at implementations, make suggestions. They call in key players. Now, the key players are there to actually stimulate your ability to think, what next? Where do we move economic to? Where do we move Africa to? Now, so it also brings a lot of people into Nigeria that maybe under normal circumstances might not come. But it also gives us a chance to showcase ourselves. And the team this year, it's a good thing for Africa. I think it's the right team for Africa now, which is for the real sector and the growth coming through real sector and developing through youths, developing through the young populations that we have. I think that would in turn allow us to see, look at the long term and the medium term on how we want these economies to grow, especially the African economy. Now, for us, I think for Nigeria, what I think we need to pick out of this is that, look, this is an opportunity for us to actually relook every area of our real sector and see how during this forum and after the forum, how we can push policies, both monetary, fiscal, of the government to actually get this thing rolling a lot faster and a lot quicker than we're doing.
Okay, so let me just quickly ask you, do you feel that the real sector is getting the encouragement that it actually requires for it to thrive? Because, you know, like I said before we started this conversation, the real sector, which comprises of a lot of informal businesses, actually drives the economy. And in most, you know, climes, what we see is that this is actually what contributes majorly to the gross domestic product at the end of the day. Right. So at the moment, where we are right now here in Nigeria, do we have enough encouragement being given, or do we see enough encouragement being given to the real sector to ensure that it grows? I
think, to be fair, in the last couple of years now, we have been seeing some real sector growth. We've seen real sector growth from 4% to 5% to today, based even on the rebasing, we're about 6.8% on the manufacturing sector. Now, on that basis, we are seeing some certain growth in manufacturing. Now, industrialization, even under the rebasing, has also grown. Now, but that has grown to about 21%. Now, on 21, and the manufacturing out of that industry is only 6.8. Agriculture has grown a lot. Now, but let's go back to where we need more people in terms of real sector, because real sector, the major advantage of real sector, if we talk of manufacturing, has knock-on effects. Whenever you actually open one factory, even if it's an SME, even a small-scale soap maker, it has a knock-on effect of other chains that are supplying that chain of element. Now, so where we see it is that the government policies now needs to improve on even the SME scale, before we even talk in the large scale. Now, for the large and the medium scale to the large, what we need to see is a bit more stabilization on infrastructure. Now, if I have access to good roads, good power, now the key thing comes back to those failures that we have not achieved yet. But irrespective of that, we need to be fair, we are seeing growth. Now, is that growth fast enough? That is the key question.
Yes, because you see, in spite of the challenges, you said that there's actually been growth. But despite these challenges, is there any way that this growth could have been more than what we have at the moment?
Definitely. We are trying to, I think the last decade, everybody says we need to move away from oil. We all agree that. Now, to move away from oil dependency means we have to grow a lot of our real sector. Now, meaning that we need to be financially more astute. We need to actually contribute more into the real sector growth. We need to see actually greater than a 6% position of manufacturing. Now, in order to do that, we need to have policies that do encourage what I always call added value. Now, in terms of added value, what you mean by that is that what is the next phase? If we're into agriculture and we're pushing agriculture, who is processing it? That's where the real sector comes in. You need to have, whether it's small-scale cottage industry that needs to process it, what is the government doing to actually encourage those process industries to process the next step? So we should move away from trying to just sell the raw material or even sell the agriculture, because I think sometimes the problem is in Nigeria, we focus too much on generating mass employment. Now, which is, yes, everybody's shouting agriculture, everybody's shouting industry. But now, what are we doing with those industries? Are we telling them to just do certain things and leave the rest to importation? Then we have not defeated the purpose. We've just moved one area to the next. Now, in order to do that, we need to get policies that would now encourage the economy to grow on small-scale industry cottages that we need to start. Thereby, you'll find that you maybe be forced to create a public-private partnership.
I will get to that.
Yes.
So let me just quickly now ask, when the Minister of Agriculture started this agricultural transformation agenda, he said we should begin to treat agriculture as a business and not as a development project. And for the recently concluded Lagos Economic Summit, they also said that power should not be treated like a business, but treated as a development issue. Now, looking at the real sector, looking at those core aspects that actually drive growth, actually create jobs. We're talking about manufacturing. We're talking about the value chain of the industries, and of course there's automobile and the rest of it. Should the real sector be treated as a business or as a development issue? And in answering that question, who should actually be driving it?
In my own view, government should never be in business. I never believe government runs businesses very well. And the statistics and the history has proved that government is not a good business company or a business process to be used. Now, the private sector must drive it. The private industries must drive it. The individuals must drive it.
And so in driving it, should they drive it as a business or as a development issue?
They must drive it as a business. But the developmental issue in there is where the government comes in under development issues is creating forced clusters. Now, if we're having development in area, where the government comes in their own is that I create an area and I create the accessibility to that area for that cluster. So if I create an industrial zone, for instance, even in where we are today, and we create an industrial zone, if we create an industrial zone and don't make it accessible to even the guy that wants to set up the industry, it's useless. Now, or you don't make it cost effective for him to set up his industry there, it's also useless. This is the part the government pushes. Now, if you create an area and all of us keep creating clusters everywhere and creating areas where the businesses can set up, now, within a cost-effective way, doing it in a cost-effective way. What I mean by that is that certain areas, I can't go and build a factory in Ikoyi. It's not going to be cost-effective. Now, but neither do I want to go and build my factory in a place where I cannot get to my customers. Now, it is where the government now plays its part and creates an environment or an area where it's accessible to both the business and both the customers, and make it affordable to those businesses that can set up there within a certain cost, even within a certain agreement on a lease. So there are many policies. This is where the government comes in. The government is not there to run the business, but is there to facilitate the business existence in areas under normal circumstances will not get us to be there. So we need to, which is why I say it's the policy that creates the growth. So it's an internal balance of policies that create those type of things. So if we need the government to actually push, the government just needs to push the right direction and create areas that is affordable, that is accessible, and also that even the customers can see that they can get their feeds from there. So it doesn't matter whether it's an industry for cement, whether it's an industry for cable, whether it's an industry for pharmaceutical, as long as those businesses have location and they have access to those locations, they'll create those clusters. So the business partnership, that the public partnership in this area is really creating accessibility. And accessibility of those places that can create my infrastructure.